Hello, welcome to Offensive Azure Security session. In this session, we're going to test our Azure environment and resources deployed there. And so as a defender, you may find typical things that may be misconfigured, or if you're a pen tester, then you may find new ideas what to test. My name is Sergey, and I will be presenter here. So first, few words about me, and then we're going to start our content. Once again, I'm Sergey, and what I usually do, I usually do pen test, and I'm also instructor, speak on conferences, many conferences. I'm also Microsoft MVP and OSCP, MCT, and so on. What I usually prefer, I prefer show live demos, and so this session will be based mostly on live demos. But before I'm gonna start demos, let me show you our agenda. So that is our agenda. I will show you how those three environments may be compromised. So how hybrid AD may be compromised when you have on-premise AD and you have AD Connect and in Azure AD as well, how those things may be compromised. You will see how virtual machines may be compromised. And also the last one is application in PaaS services. It will use only PaaS services, how those things may be compromised as well. That's my agenda, so let's get started. As I mentioned before, a session will be based on live demos, so you will not see a lot of slides here. I will use slides to just show where we are, but I will not really use slides for technical explanation. So the first scenario is my on-prem Active Directory with AD Connect, and of course Azure AD as well. So let me jump to demos. To demo as I promised you. And so here I have a simple configuration. First of all, I have the main controller, and I have AD Connect server as well. And it's very typical configuration. Oh, of course, you have multiple domain controllers. Doesn't really matter. So the idea here, I have Active Directory on premises, and I have AD Connect that connects me to Azure AD. What may go wrong here if I connect my on-premise AD to Azure AD using AD Connect? So when I do it, during configuration of AD Connect, I must I must create what's called AD Forest account. AD Forest account, that's an account that will get access to on-prem database, Azure AD to Azure AD, to get accounts from there, to get users, to get groups. So this account will be used to access your on-premises AD. And so during the AD Connect configuration, you must create this account, or you may also pre-create, but more secure option is more recommended is the first one. Create new AD account. So AD Connect will create a new account for you. Let's take a look on this account. If I go back to my DC, and in folder called users, I may find this account. It's called MSOL _ and something. If I look at the account itself, this account should be just a regular user, and looks like there's no problem with this account, just a low priv account. And yeah, it is, but when you also configure AD Connect, you will also enable, if you wish, of course, some optional features. And when you enable optional features, that account will have more permissions. Let's take a look on some features that are, you may see, you see some features on the slide that I will give you commentaries only about one feature. And very important feature, which is highly recommended, is called password hash sync. So this feature allows you to store password hashes of your on-premises users in Azure AD. So after synchronization, not only user itself will be created in the cloud, but also user password hashed will be stored in the cloud as well. And so it's the recommended disaster recovery option, because if you lose connectivity between your on-premises and the cloud, users will be able to log into the cloud with using stored hashes in the cloud. That's one of the benefits of this password hash sync. But when you enable password hash sync, MSL account will have extra permissions. Account will have those two permissions. So replicate directory changes and replicate directory changes all. So what those permissions are all about? Those permissions will allow you to replicate Active Directory. So you will act like, you may act like a domain controller. So let's take a look on this permissions. If I go to properties of my domain and go to security, find this MSL and find, yeah, here we go. So I have those permissions. And you may say here, all right, so yeah, that's quite a lot of permissions, but this account was created automatically by Microsoft and we don't know the password of this account. So it should be secure. Yeah, it is secure, but how do you think if we have an account and we don't know the password, someone or something must know this password if this something wants to use this account? So AD Connect itself must know this password. Let's take a look where this value is stored. Let me jump back to AD Connect and open AD Connect database, which is called AD Sync. And here we have multiple tables. I need a table called MMS Management Agent. Let me remove columns I don't need. And those columns as well. And let's run that. So let me find this account. And yeah, it's here. So as you can see here, that's my account in SQL database, AD Connect database. And also there's a parameter called password, which says encrypted. So yeah, password is there, but password is encrypted. Not that simple. So there's no plain text password. All right, maybe it's possible to decrypt password. Yeah, it is. If you are a local administrator on AD Connect server, and here's the problem. So before all of this, it's a common configuration. But where's the problem? The problem is if your regular admin, like a server admin, middle level admin, tier 2 admin, whatever it may be, may have local admin access to AD Connect server. Let me show you what may happen if you have configuration like this. I'm gonna open PowerShell and try to decrypt this account. You made it manually, but it will be not very straightforward. Much better is to find a tool called AD Connect Dump. You may find freely on GitHub. By the way, on the GitHub, you may also find the link how to decrypt account manually. So the whole procedure, but it will take so much time. I'm not going to show you here. But if you want to just have a result, let me run this tool. And look at this. Now I have account and the password. So using this value, let me copy this password. I'm gonna jump to another machine and let me open this one as different user. Type password here and user here and click OK. So now what I'm trying to do, I'm going to open command prompt on client machine as this MSOL user. I also have a command prompt opened. Let me show you who am I. I'm a user JDA, so just like a regular user who is local admin on this machine, but not an administrator in the main. Now let's see a second command prompt. Here I am MSOL user, and so let's try to access domain controller from both command prompts. Let me try to do it as JDA. Nope, denied. let's try to do it as MSOL denied. So it's the accounts, they don't have permissions to access Active Directory. But once again, one account, which is MSOL, has permissions to replicate Active Directory. And so if I want to use this permission, I will run a tool called Mimikatz. By the way, Mimikatz may be detected by any antivirus. I have a different session on how to evade antiviruses and so on. So go ahead and find me on LinkedIn. You will find a link there as well on my session about evasion. And here, what I want to do, I want to run a simple command called lsa dump dcsync, and I want to get information about user trainer. So I will replicate information about domain administrator, and now I have a hash of this user. Now I'm gonna open Mimikatz again. Also, I want to say privilege debug, and run very well-known command called pass the hash. And let me copy this hash and place here. And now, if I try to access the domain controller, look at this. Now I have permissions to access the domain controller, so it means I'm a domain admin. And so now we have this environment compromised. I'm a domain admin, and I became domain admin based on my access to Azure AD Connect server. So if you have administrators who have access to this environment, I mean to AD Connect, be careful. Those guys, they may become domain admins if they wish. So next scenario will be my Jenkins virtual machines, and I have a Jenkins application deployed on virtual machines, and one node on Windows, second node on Linux. To be fair, it doesn't really matter if it's Jenkins or something else. My goal here is not to show you Jenkins. The goal is to show you that I may compromise different operating systems. Maybe Linux, maybe Windows, doesn't really matter. So let me jump back to demo. And so let's continue from here. Now I have domain admin credentials, and I want to start to explore Azure and virtual machines in Azure. If I'm a domain admin, what I can do with those permissions? So literally, I can connect to any workstation on this network. Let me show you what I can do if I have permission like this, if I can connect to any workstation. I'm gonna open workstation, one workstation, and another workstation. And here I want to say AZ account list, and let's output as a table. And I can see here the list of my subscriptions. All right, let's try this. Let's try to do the same on the second machine. All right, now I can see that it says, please run AZ login to access your account. So it asked me for login here, but didn't ask me for login here. So probably it means that somewhere credentials to access the cloud are cached. Where are they cached? If you go to user profile and you find a folder called .azure, and here are cached credentials. So if I'm a domain admin, what I can do, I can connect to workstation of developer or system admin who has access to Azure and steal this token. Let's try to take this token. Let's zip it real quick. And copy this to second machine. Let me remove this. And extract this .azure. All right, so now let's try again, fingers crossed. And now I have list of subscription. It means I have the same level of access as the administrator on that machine, where I get the folder with token. So with those permissions, I can start to explore virtual machines. So let's say AZVM list, and I should see the list of virtual machines from this account. Yeah, I can see the list of machines. I'm interested in Jenkins, so I will test those two machines, Jenkins master and Jenkins slave. All right, so what I can do with virtual machines. Now let me jump to Portal and let me give you some demo about virtual machines, so you'll get more ideas what may be the problem. If you look at the virtual machines, you may find the option called Run Command. Let's click there. And for Windows machine, it's Linux machine. For Linux machine, you may find the command to run shell script. It means you will run bash script. So if I click there, I may run script here. If I go to Windows machine, I'm gonna see the same but PowerShell script. Let's see that. And here I can see PowerShell script. What is interesting about this run command? First of all, they will be executed with the highest permissions, with the highest privileges. They will be executed on Windows with system privileges and on Linux with root privileges. That's the first idea that you should keep in mind. Second idea, to execute them, you just need to be a reader on the machine level. So let me show you this. If I click reader and click and look at my permissions, compute, and let me find run command. So look at this. So if I'm a reader, I have permissions to run commands. All right, so that's maybe a problem. If that user had read permissions, that user may run commands. So if I want to connect the virtual machine and let's say I want to get into virtual machine, I must know normally a username and password. But let me show you how with run commands I can bypass those requirements. What I want to do, I will run reverse shell commands, and so those commands will allow me to get into virtual machine without restrictions. Let's take a look on that. So let's first try a Linux reverse shell. I'm gonna run this script from command prompt, and I will run the command like this. So that should give me a reverse shell with Linux machine. Let's try that. What is important to know, run commands not super quick, so we may need to wait some number of seconds. I'm not really sure. Yeah. So let's wait. 30 seconds, and hopefully I will get a shell. In parallel, let me try to run that for on Windows. And Windows will be slightly different. In my case, I will download my executable with a reverse shell and just run it. Let's try to do it here. All right, let's see. I already have a shell on Linux. Let's see if I type ID and root here, and so I can do whatever I want on Linux machine. So I'm root here, and I'm a god on this machine. Let's take a look on Windows, and yeah, we have the same for Windows. And I work as the local system. And to just finish the demo about Jenkins, maybe no, maybe not. There's an error log of Jenkins, and you may find the initial password there in Jenkins. So if I copy this password, and I can find all right. So let me just copy this first. Try to log into Jenkins. Let's take this password again. this, paste here. Of course, it may not work. To be fair, I don't really care if this is working or not. My goal was to show you how can I get into virtual machines, not how can I get into Jenkins. All right, so, but I hope it was clear how virtual machines may be compromised, because if I have read access on virtual machine level, what I can do, I can just get into. So that was the second scenario where we talk about legacy application. Jenkins is not really legacy, but this application is based on virtual machines. So finally, let's take a look at the last scenario. And here we're going to cover application which should be a bit more interesting. In this application, we will have application with a SQL database backend. Also, the credentials to access backend will not be stored locally on the web application. It will be stored in a key vault. And the credentials, they will be rotated periodically with Azure functions. And also application will be protected with application gateway in front with WAF feature enabled. So it looks like this application is quite secure. But let's try that first. Let's try that. So I'm gonna jump back to demo as usual. So we compromised, let me close all of this. So we compromised two environments. Now let's take a look. How can I try to get into this this application? Let me show you one more slide to just give an idea what may be in our case an entry point. So my goal, my goal is to get access to database, because all of the most interesting things will be there. But as you remember, credentials are to access database will be stored in Key Vault. Let's first test if I have access to Key Vault or not. I'm gonna go to Key Vault. Maybe this user that was compromised already have access to Key Vault. Let's see that. If I go to secrets, no, there is no permissions to access Key Vault. Let me quickly give permissions to myself to just show you that those something exists there. I'm gonna just give permission to list, click add here and go back to secrets, refresh, no, huh. Oh damn it, I didn't save it, sorry. Let's try again, click add, and let's click save. And now if I go to secrets, I have password here, pass, and username. So let me remove this permission, click save again. And now let's try to somehow get access to those secrets. And for me, entry point will be key rotation function, because it's very recommended to have key rotation, keys or secrets in my case, rotation. And on Microsoft website, you may even find the function that will rotate the secret in the key vault and on the target application like SQL database on our target. So here's a slide with my function. So I have a function, and this function will like change password in SQL database and the key vault at the same time. And what the typical problem that I find periodically in the real world, when a function has different configuration compared to Key Vault. So Key Vault may be very restrictive, but at the same time function will have also like a reader permissions inherited from subscription, and so function will have a bit more permissions, so users will have a bit more permissions on that function compared to Key Vault. Let me show you what I can do if I have a case like this. So I'm gonna go to portal and find function applications. And here I have one function. So let's take a look at what do we have here. Under one function application, I have two functions. One is triggered by event grid. Second one is triggered by HTTP. This one will be more interesting for me because I can trigger that manually. So let me show you the code. Come on. And so by default, when I deploy the function from Microsoft GitHub, from GitHub, it will show me the code like this. So this code is the legit code to rotate secrets. But where may be the problem? The problem is by default, function may be accessed via FTP. So if you look at the configuration of the function, you may find that in general settings, FTP is enabled by default. In most cases, you don't use that, but it's enabled by default. And so if you go to the deployment center, you may find FTP credentials here. And so here's the FTP credentials. So now let me try to get those credentials, but of course, as usual, from command prompt. So let me open command prompt here, and let's try to get, first of all, a URL for FTP URL to connect the function. So here's the FTP URL. Let me copy this and paste to FileZilla. And then I want to get credentials of this function application. And here's the username. Paste here. And here is the password. Let me copy this. Here's the password. And now I have permissions to log in there. And I can see here the structure, which is my two functions. Let me go to the HTTP function, and here I can see the structure of the function. What I can do, I can upload my own code. And so this code, with the name called run.ps1, in this case, it's the PowerShell function. So I can upload my run.ps1 code, and this code will be executed when function is triggered. And so this function, because the function has permissions to access Key Vault, I will access Key Vault and I will get information from Key Vault on behalf of function. And my code will just get information I need from Key Vault. Let's try that. I'm gonna just open PowerShell and run the command like this. And so let's try to get credentials from Key Vault. Fingers crossed, I will get it. Also, by the way, I can go to function itself and just take a look when it was executed. If I click monitor, nothing here. Maybe already, yeah, it's already give me information. So it finished. Now I can see that username is web app and the password is password, and those credentials will be used to connect to SQL Server. So let's try to connect to SQL Server now. First, let me take this URL and type my password. And now I can see I was connected. And I can see my database with tables and the content there. And there's only one record there. Let me try to do the same from the different workstation. Let me just connect, copy this from different workstation. And now it says, hey, you can't do it because Firewall does not allow you to connect to this server. Interesting. Let's take a look how this firewall looked like. Now let's go to database. and open this database. So every SQL database in the cloud has this, the SQL Server has the Firewall database as well, by the way. So if I click Firewall, I can find here very interesting configuration, which is very typical. This firewall has this option enabled. It says allow Azure services and the resources to access this server. What does it mean? Many people think that it means that their Azure virtual machines, their Azure services may access this database. But in fact, it is not really true. This option means that any Azure IP address will be able to access this SQL Server. So, from any customer subscription, from any country in the world, you will be able to access your SQL Server. Firewall will not filter that, at least, if you have this option enabled. So quite often, the IT professionals in companies, security professionals, they don't really understand the impact of this option. So if I have this option enabled, then any virtual machine in Azure with Azure IP address may have access to my SQL. Let me disable this. And let's try to allow only private access, so there is no public access at all. Now, my SQL is protected better. Now I have credentials, but access allowed only from internal network, so I cannot access from anywhere. Is it possible to get into database? Yeah, if we compromise the application itself, and so from application we can get access to SQL database. Let's try to do it. Let me go back to my portal, and I'm gonna open application. So if I just go to application configuration, you may find here networking. If I click configure networking, it says, hey, you must have a standard tier if you want to work with networking. So let me upgrade my application to S1. And so now I can connect my application to network. Let me do it real quick. So I'm gonna say add VNet, and I want to connect my application to virtual network. Click OK. And so that will take some time before this application will be able to connect. So as you can see here, it's already it says connected, but in reality, what I can do, I can really quickly restart this application to speed things up. So now, if I compromise this application, I should be able to get into database. The quite common question, wait a second, but how to compromise the application? Especially if you look at if you look here, there's a WAF application firewall will not allow me to just simply get into application. Yes, but I just want to remind you, quickly remind you that we have for web application the same default configuration. FTP is allowed. If I click configuration and go to general settings, I may find here FTP is allowed by default. So quite often companies, they do not disable this FTP, and in the same manner I can get into this application as before. Let me try to do it. So let me close this and this. Now if I just try the same, let me find FTP URL of the application. Copy this. And credentials as well. And And so let me type credentials as well. So as you can see here, this application is nothing more than just a PHP page, and let's first explore this application. We'll just check that the application is working. Let me open the application itself. Let's click here. I can see the application is here and the application is working. So let me just take a look. If I say I'm a user, let's call myself Michael, let's say my email is msmith, whatever it may be, whatever.com, and let's say submit. This is working, so it's working with database. The application is working. Now let me jump back to my FileZilla, and now what I can do, if I know that this application is PHP, what I can do, I can upload my shell, and you know that PHP and ASP as well, by the way, they are executed on the server side. So the PHP will be executed on the server side, not on the client side. So if I can upload my own PHP code, I can execute something on server. Let me just run my shell and look at this. So now I have access to this workstation or the server through web shell. Web shell not super interactive, so let me establish the better shell. So on my web shell, I want to fix the shell. I want to make shell better, and so now I have a shell. All right. So what I found here, that my username is just a regular user, not a web server user. Usually a low privilege user, so I will not be able to do whatever I want on this server. My goal is to connect to SQL database. But the problem is that a regular server doesn't have tools to connect to SQL Server. I need some sort of management studio for Linux. It's Linux, of course, not Visual Studio. It's not management studio. It will be like a SQL CLI. But to install that, I must be an admin. I must have sudo permissions or root permissions. I don't have it. So what I can do here, I can use some third-party tools, and the tool that you may try called uSQL. This tool will work without installation. And so using uSQL, I will try to connect to SQL database. I'm gonna say connect using uSQL, and it looks like I was connected. Let's try to list tables. And look at this, I can see 2 tables there. So let's try to list the content. And look at this, so my John Doe and my Michael user are there. So now I have access to SQL database. So I hope all of this was informative and you get an idea how those things may be compromised. But there's one more piece I want to show you here, is application gateway with web application firewall. Is it possible to bypass this application firewall? Because most of the time, if you use WAF, attackers will try to attack your application right away, just not from internal when they have an account. They will try to send SQL injections and whatever it may be. And when you're using WAF from Microsoft, how secure it is, what this WAF is all about. So let's take a look on this. If I go to application gateways, I may find I have 2 WAF application firewalls, and normally that's application gateway with WAF feature turned on. And my WAF is working in prevention mode, and also you may find the rules that are applicable to this WAF, and they are from OWASP. So let's try to see that in action. First of all, I'm going to open my web application. So that's the regular web application. And second instance is the same application but protected with WAF. Let's first try to run Sql Injection on the regular application. So that's Sql Injection, and as you can see, this injection reveals some additional information. It shows me the path to my page, it shows me the SQL driver, show me the database name. So that's an error-based injection. And attackers may use that to get more information. And by the way, we have different type of injections, and some injection may give me information, may give attackers information from my database as well. If I try to do the same against application that are protected by WAF, let's try to do it. No, doesn't work. Access denied. So it just doesn't work. So and you may see here that WAF is protected this request. If I try to run another request, and you may ask me, wait a second, so Microsoft has their own WAF and they don't tell us about this? No, not really. They don't use like their own WAF. They use pretty common mod security, which is like open source WAF, but they have the rules from OWASP. And let's take a look on that's the last demo here, how effective those rules are. I use a tool called WAF Ninja. This tool, the goal of this tool is to send some, it's fuzz. So it sends some queries, sends some requests, and analyze the response. And so, as you can see here on the left, there's a request, and on the right the result. And all of the attempts to bypass WAF were not successful. So none of those commands worked. So you may consider this WAF as like a pretty secure way to protect your application. All right, so from here, let me jump back to slide. So during the last 45 minutes, you saw how multiple environments may be compromised. And the common question, wait a second, but how to mitigate all of this? Just in case, this session is not really about protection. I talk more about offensive things, and you may just decide yourself how you want to protect it. But let me give you some ideas, just ideas on the slide. First of all, the first scenario when we compromised AD Forest account. First thing you should keep in mind, your AD Connect must be managed by your domain admins, nobody else. Don't allow like server administrators or whatever it may be, help desk, to have admin access to your AD Connect server, because you saw that using this admin access, anyone may elevate the domain admin to domain administrator. So principle of least privileges, that's always the case. Also, one more idea, keep an eye on the new tool called AD Connect Cloud Sync. It's like a agent-based synchronization where you don't use the account, you use group managed account, group managed service account, and you will not be able, if this account is compromised, you will not, nobody will be able to log in with that account. This tool is pretty new, so not all of the features are from AD Connect are available at this moment, but just keep an eye on this tool. Next one, where I stole credentials from local workstation. So you may consider multiple things here. First of all, PAW or PO. It means that we should administer, ideally, we should administer our Azure environment from the separate workstation, which must be pretty secure. Not the regular workstation, but the separate workstation, if it's possible, of course. And also principle of least privileges. So the user who administer should not have all the keys to the kingdom. And also good idea is to use a feature called PIM from Azure AD. Next one, when I run commands against Azure VMs, when I run command, keep in mind principle of least privilege again. Don't allow even reader permissions if the users they don't need it. And quite often those permissions are inherited from subscription. Be careful, check permissions. Next one, when I upload the shell or modified function, make sure that if you don't use FTP, FTP is disabled, because quite often companies, they don't use FTP, they use other ways to deploy their code, but FTP just enabled just because it's just a default. Also, Azure SQL connectivity, please allow Azure services and the resources to access the server. Keep in mind, it is not only your Azure services, it's any Azure service from any subscription. So it's much better to use private links. Of course, it's still possible through an application to get access to database, but it's better than just allow public access to database itself. And finally, if you want to be protected from Sql injections or whatever, or cross-site scripting or whatever it may be, don't forget WAF or application firewall will be pretty nice option to protect your application. All right, I hope that session was informative and you found some ideas what you may check in your Azure environment and how you can protect your applications better. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye-bye.